Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the Focus weekly session of Ethics, Integrity, and Aptitude. Today, we shall keep the session short so that you can keep up with the preparation of prelims, and we are going to try something new. Today, I'm going to give you a list of examples from the newspaper articles suitable to the syllabus topic and suitable to those topics which appear in the question paper with very high frequency. The first category I've taken for examples from the news last week is empathy and emotional intelligence. Empathy is there in the third chapter in the civil service values. Emotional intelligence is the fourth chapter of your syllabus, and emotional intelligence also has empathy as one of the component. A very unfortunate event has occurred day before yesterday, a dastardly incident of terrorism. A terrorist killing tourists in Kashmir in Pahalgam region. And the media is reporting that around 30 tourists have been dead so far. This is very unfortunate for entire India, for national security, and also for the locals, because the local economy was dependent on tourism, and now it's the locals who are going to suffer the most. The local taxi driver association has said that the terrorists have not killed the tourist, they have killed their family members. An intuitive emotional response has come out from the locals. The local guides in Pahalgam helped injured tourists after the terror attack, showing empathy and swift, intuitive emotional response. In this regard, you can also seek the example for leadership and crisis management. Home Minister Amit Shah immediately visited Pahalgam post-terror attack. Prime Minister also has cut short on his trip to Saudi Arabia, and he has come around 16, 18 hours earlier compared to the previous planned return. Concerning empathy and emotional intelligence, we can also look for examples in other news, like the rescue team rushed to Delhi building collapse site. Immediate response happened by the rescue team and also by the locals, showing sensitivity, locals showing brotherhood, fraternity, good neighborliness, and taking effort, risking their life to save the trapped residents. The government also announced rupees 2 lakh to victims of Delhi building collapse. We can find the example of moral leadership also in the death of Pope Francis. That also happened last week. And Pope Francis will always be remembered for championing the rights of vulnerable sections, for the migrants, and he was very vocal for social justice despite the criticism from the traditionalists. There was also news that the Kerala CM inaugurated a tribal resettlement project for landslide victims that shows empathy in governance, that can show public service values of justice, of fairness, of empathy, and compassion. Recently, you might also have picked up in the news the IAF officers road rage in Bangalore. And initially, it was appearing in news as though that he's the victim, but later the CCTV footage shows that he was having the aggressive posture. Initially, that escalated the situation, and he got beaten up. This can be used as an example for aptitude and attitude. He must have the aptitude, professional aptitude at least, if not moral aptitude, because he is the IAF officer. But it's not just the aptitude, it's the attitude that together decides success in life. It is also often said it could be the aptitude that take you towards success, but attitude will have hold on success, and you can be successful for a long time if you have the right attitude. There also recently has been a remark by one of the MP against the Supreme Court, saying that the Supreme Court and the Chief Justice of India in particular is responsible for the communal disturbance and the civic disturbance happening in the country. The Bar Council of Supreme Court has taken exception and has demanded action against him. The party to which he belongs also has distanced from his remark. It shows, in syllabus you have moral and political attitude. And this conduct of the MP can be related to the political attitude that you must have. That is in the best interest of democracy. NERI, National Environmental Engineering Research Institute, that is one of the arm of CSIR, was tasked by the Supreme Court to assess industrial impact on the Taj Mahal. This can be taken example of proactive governance or proactive environmental governance or ethical governance or environmental ethics. West Bengal has launched rupees 16,000 crore pollution-free power plant. Power plant is one of the major source of urban pollution. And this is supposed to promote sustainable development, not the pollution. The pollution-free power plant is supposed to promote sustainable development. So this can also be taken as example of ethical governance, good governance, environmental ethics. The citizens in Odisha has resisted hotel construction near Simlipal Reserve. This can be taken as example of civic engagement, proactive governance. Plato always used to say that the price that good men pays for not participating in the process of governance is to be ruled by evil men. So civic engagement is important. This can also be taken in line with environmental ethics. Amravati's green infrastructure plan and smart roads. This can be taken example of urban planning, good governance, ethical governance. It can also be taken in the context of environmental ethics. You must have caught up with this news. This has been one of the bold Supreme Court judgment in recent times. Supreme Court has set timelines for governance for governors to assent to state bills. It has also given this timeline for precedent, which has came as a shock for many. And the vice president has been very vocal in criticizing this particular judgment of Supreme Court. And he has been saying that Parliament is supreme, Parliament is sovereign, and Supreme Court has done overreach. Supreme Court has crossed the constitutional boundaries. And this becomes very important with regard to the concept of separation of power, which you have done under in polity, in the concept of Montesquieu, or you must also have done this under the social contract given by John Locke. Separation of power, consent of people, judicial review, rule of law, integrity, these are important related concepts with regard to ethics in administration. Ethics in administration is the title of your 6th chapter. And to maintain accountability, there are many models that the Constitution and otherwise also exist. Judicial review is one of the models. And in India, Parliament is not supreme like UK. The parliamentary laws have to go under judicial review, and it's the supremacy of the Constitution and nothing else. So judiciary has a right to check if the laws are in harmony with the constitutional morality. Like Supreme Court has struck down the electoral bond scheme, and Supreme Court is in the process of reviewing the Waqf bill or the Waqf Act. So right now, there are two things. One is that Supreme Court has the power for judicial review, and Supreme Court also has the power to interpret the Constitution. So the provisions have been interpreted by the Supreme Court that the will of power will of people is an important principle. And the state legislature is a representative of will of people under the social contract of John Locke in that model. And governor cannot be overriding it. That's the interpretation of Supreme Court. Although the center has filed curative petition and the judgment may change, we do not know. But things as it stand now, Supreme Court has given the judgment and Supreme Court has a right to interpret it. And Supreme Court also has the right to interpret its own judgment and change its own judgment under the curative petition. So the question of separation of power, rule of law, integrity, that's all arises, accountability all arises from this issue. So we can use this example in various contexts, in context of legislative accountability and executive accountability and judicial review and separation of power, etc. And the criticism of the vice president can also be used in the context of freedom of speech and expression, but also talking of separation of power and rule of law, which Supreme Court has asserted now and then, and a vice president needs to appreciate that constitutional authority given to the Supreme Court. Then after this incident, there has been another debate concerning the similar issues that a case was filed in the Supreme Court to impose the precedent rule 356, but beginning from Article 355. when there is external aggression or internal disturbance, then the center can suspend the government in the state in order to protect the state from the national security from external aggression or internal disturbance. So there was a plea in the Supreme Court to direct the center to use Article 355. But in this very case, Supreme Court said that you go to the parliament, or it's actually the power of the center, it's the power of the executive to do it. So Supreme Court practiced judicial restraint in this case. And the court said that it is only after the center has exercised its power, judicial review can happen. Like for all the time when the discussion was going on the work, Supreme Court cannot direct anything. When the bill was passed, only after that, the Supreme Court has taken it for scrutiny. So the court said that we cannot give such kind of direction, but we can review the decision taken by the center post facto. And then there was another news that has been making round for quite a while, but was also appearing last week. Supreme Court en bloc cancelled 2016 West Bengal teacher recruitment due to egregious violation of Article 14 and Article 16. With, I think, exception of one teacher, the job of all the teachers is gone. Because the principles were not followed in the process. The integrity of the recruitment process was not followed. So it was cancelled out. It can be used for rule of law. It can be used for integrity. It can be used for accountability. In Maharashtra, the news is coming that there are certain leaders feeling conflicted by the idea of local pride and the cultural identity and pushing for Maratha language. But under the national education policy, under the three language policy, Hindi is to be compulsory in all government schools. Now, the state government is caught in the bind and they don't know really how to deal with it because they had been pushing for Marathi over Hindi, but the national education policy norms suggest three language policy and Hindi has to be a compulsory language in all government schools. This we can discuss in the context of ethical dilemma. On one side, you have your cultural identity, you have the local context, and you have the local vision. On the other side, there's a national vision. And there's a broader idea of having a common language for national cohesion. So how the state government would deal with it, that's a question. It's an example of ethical dilemma. Kind of similar dilemma is being, not similar, but the dilemma is there in the leaders of Karnataka. The leaders of Karnataka, because the state caste census report has been made out in public. And the recommendation has been to increase the reservation beyond 50%, looking at the population and their percentage of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, etc. But the Supreme Court has put a bar on reservation for 50% to balance the empathy and compassion with efficiency in administration. Now, again, there is, with one exception of Tamil Nadu, Supreme Court has allowed for Tamil Nadu, but that's only one exception. But the broad idea is the reservation should not increase the capping of 50%. But then again, there's an ethical dilemma with their policies and their promises to the community like Lingayats, etc. in the past, and the recommendation of the caste census report, the commissioner who prepared it. And on the other side, the question of efficiency and the national norms and the Supreme Court judgment. That will bring ethical dilemma for the state government of Karnataka. We can look at some of the examples from the point of view of transparency and accountability. Delhi High Court directed removal of Patanjali's defamatory video. Allegedly, although they did not take the name, but allegedly, and from the context, it's quite clear that it was for Ruabza. The point is that they have their own sherbet, Rose Sherbet, launched. And in the launch of that, the founder of Patanjali was making defamatory video that Mukul Rohatgi, the ex-law officer of the government of India, was representing Ruabza, has said amounts to hate speech. And the judges in this case of Delhi High Court has said that this shocked their conscience. And they have ordered the removal of such videos. And on affidavit, they have taken the lawyer of the Patanjali that such kind of remark will not be made in the future. This can be from the point of view of accountability and ethical corporate governance, accountability and transparency in advertisements. Competition is good for the country. If you're having another brand, you have to make better product, and that's always good for the customer, consumers. But there has to be ethics in corporate governance. That's the point of this issue. Delhi CM launched GPS-enabled water tankers. GPS-enabled trucks for the periods in Madhya Pradesh. This has been story of old times. From 2015-16, they started it. GPS-enabled water tankers to enhance transparency in service delivery. The Delhi CM overlooked an investigation into the building collapse, the case that we had in the beginning, and promised a strict action. They would look into the building norms and clearance, etc., that will bring accountability. And Delhi CM made nodal officers accountable at all 194 waterlogging spots to ensure monsoon preparedness. Monsoon preparedness is an important thing. The dredging is not done, nalas are not cleared, and then urban flooding happens, and unforeseen painful incidents also happens. We can pick up some example from last week for ethical governance as well. Lifting of social boycott in the Mallam village. There was a social boycott of the Dalit community after some death of a 38-year-old Dalit youth, and after that, the social conflict and confrontations. But the DM there has played an exemplary role in peacekeeping and forming committees of 6 members each from both sides. And the revenue commissioner also as being heading the committee, and DM overlooking at the whole process and mediating between the two parties to ensure that the boycott is given up and the peace talks were successful. This is an exemplary example of developing peace among community, developing trust, confidence building through communications. NCW reported women suffered the most in Murshidabad riots in the West Bengal and urged government for confidence building. This can be taken as an example of gender sensitivity. It is always seen, always, in the cases of riots, in the cases of war zone, also the terrorism that happened in Pahalgam, it's the men who were killed. But the thing is now the emotional suffering of the women that cannot be accounted for. They will be inconsolable when their husbands are killed. Women suffer the most, and this is less accounted for, or we do not talk from that perspective that women's suffering is proportionally much higher than the men's suffering in various ways in all the cases of violence. This has been highlighted by the NCW report. Supreme Court upheld home buyers' right to peaceful protest. The case was that the builder has put up the case of maligning his name and defamation on the home buyers. But the Supreme Court upheld that if they are peaceful protests, and even if they are taking name, and even if they're having the placards, and they're highlighting the name of the builder, it does not amount to defamation. And home buyers have right to peaceful protest. This is protecting consumer rights and freedom of expression. Supreme Court recently also has said there was a petition filed in Supreme Court to say that in Maharashtra, the signboards, they also have written the message in Urdu language, apart from Marathi. And the petitioner wanted all the Urdu signboards to be removed. And this petitioner was schooled by the Supreme Court judge that Urdu is not the language of one particular religion. It's not the language of Muslims. That is generally understood as. And he said it is unfortunate. Urdu is a language that is developed out of Persians, out of Arabic, out of Sanskrit, out of Devanagari. It's the language of the army. And when different people from different parts assembled in the army, that was one institution from where a different culture merged in the medieval time. And from there, Urdu came out. It's a mixture of different language. It has been originated in India. So he said that there's no problem of the judge, this judgment said that there's no problem in having the signboard in Urdu. You can use this example in many contexts in ethical governance, in cultural sensitivity, India's idea of shared culture, debunking religious stereotyping of languages. We can take example for efficient justice delivery. In the POXO case, one of the POXO case concluded in record time. If you hear the record, it won't sound like a record time. It took 7 weeks. But compared to the pace that other cases move in Indian judiciary, this is record time, using DNA evidence demonstrating dedication to protecting vulnerable groups. The 7 week, if you compare the average time, is pretty fast. And this can be taken as an example for sensitivity in justice delivery, efficiency in justice delivery, use of technology for ethical governance, etc. In contrast, in the case of Mehul Choksi, there have been statements of the security agency's chief that it has been the most difficult case to get him back. Justice delivery faced complex interface in case of fugitive economic offenders. The justice delivery can become inefficient if the interfaces are not smooth, coordination and communication is not there, standard protocols are not there. But it has to be expedited by efficiency, expedited by dedication, by spirit of service, by use of technology, etc. We can also, in the context of use of technology, gather one example from the last week news. There was a launch of AI-driven Sanskrit literature portal that exemplifies ethical innovation to preserve the cultural heritage. Now we will deal with a case study. Although UPSC has not asked a very complex case study on terrorism that we can relate to the Pahalgam incident, but UPSC has asked a really complex case with regard to Naxalism. So instead of making a case on terrorism, I rather decided to take up this case of 2024 and discuss. It's a long case. You have to be very patient and hear me out very carefully if you have not already read this case earlier. With multi-pronged strategy of the central and state governments, especially in the last few years, the Naxalite problem has been resolved to a large extent in the affected states of the country. However, there are a few pockets in certain states where Naxalite problem still persists. It still persists, mainly due to involvement of foreign countries. Rohit is posted as SP for special operations for the last 1 year in one of the districts which is still affected by the Naxalite problems. The district administration has taken a lot of developmental works in the recent past in the Naxalite affected areas to win the hearts and minds of the people. Over a period of time, Rohit has established an excellent intelligence network to get the real-time information regarding the movement of Naxalite cadre, to instill confidence in the public and have moral ascendancy over the Naxalite. A number of cordons and search operations are being conducted by the police. Rohit, who himself was leading one of the contingent, got a message through his intelligence source that about 10 hardcore Naxalites were hiding in a particular village with sophisticated weapons. Without wasting any time, Rohit reached the target village with his team and laid out a foolproof cordon and started carrying out a systematic search. During the search, his team managed to overpower all the Naxalites along with their automatic weapons. However, in the meantime, more than 500 tribal women surrounded the village and started marching towards the target house. They were shouting and demanding the immediate release of insurgents, since they are their protectors and saviors. The situation on the ground was becoming very critical as the tribal women were extremely agitated and aggressive. Rohit tried to contact his superior officer, IG for special operations of the state, on radio set and on mobile phone, but failed to do so due to poor connectivity. Rohit was in great dilemma since out of the Naxalite apprehended, two were not only hardcore top insurgents with prize money of 10 lakh on their heads, but were also involved in the recent ambush on the security forces. However, if he did not release the Naxalites, the situation could get out of control since the tribal women were aggressively charging towards them. In that case, to control the situation, Rohit might have to resort to firing, which may lead to valuable loss of lives of civilians and would further complicate the situation. Okay, so it's a complex case. The questions are, what are the options available for Rohit to cope with the situation? What are the ethical dilemmas being faced by Rohit? Which of the options do you think would be more appropriate for Rohit to adopt and why? In the present case, what are the extra precautionary measures to be taken by police in dealing with women protesters? There are four parts, and you have to hurry up because the case already is very long, and a lot of time will go into reading the case. And there are four parts to answer four parts. It's really, really challenging to finish it on time. What are the options available? There are many options. There are many options that you can think outside of exam hall, but to think inside of exam hall, you really have to have a lot of practice. One of the things is that release the Naxalite under the pressure. This may pacify the crowd temporarily, but this is going to demoralize the forces. This will risk emboldening the insurgents. This will set a very wrong precedent. This will undermine rule of law and undermine states' authority. This will also be disrespect to the family of the Jawans who have been killed by the ambush. So the outcome is not going to be good if you release the Naxalites. Use force to disperse the crowd. If you use the force, that will retain the custody of the two hardcore Naxalites, but it will risk civilian casualties and further alienate locals. This will worsen the level of trust and escalate the conflict. It's a tight situation that you're in. You'll have to think of something else, like negotiate with women using local mediators, some elders, some trusted village locals, some trusted intelligence gatherers that you may have, some assets that you may have developed in the region, use them for negotiation. This will diffuse the tension and will give you more time. This uphold values of empathy, non-violence, and trust, public trust. This also uphold the right to dissent and the right to have an opposite point of view than from the government of the citizens. This will bring a lot of good if it happens. And suppose you feel that it's not working, then at least you can bargain for more time. You can wait for the reinforcement to come. And this delay decision until proper support. Risky if situation escalates fast. To buy some time, you really have to be very good at negotiating, or you have to be very, very good in the dealing tactics that you will involve with the locals. In case you think that situation is slipping, the reinforcement is not coming, the backup is not there, communication is not happening, then you may use non-lethal crowd control methods. Maybe use tear gases, loudspeakers, negotiations, or rubber bullets. This will retain insurgent without firing, without actual casualty. Risk managed approach, but may not completely neutralize the crowd if you just use, because they are 500 and they may overpower you the moment you try to escalate the situation. You may try creating a safe evacuation corridor. If that's possible, that you engage the crowd and find out some way to distract the crowd and then take the insurgent. Some officers can take them, or you can take them while your officers are negotiating, or you can negotiate while your officers are finding a way out, or some safe evacuation corridor for the insurgents. This arrest is preserved, crowd avoided, tactical de-escalation, but logistically challenging because it's written in the case that they have surrounded the house. And if they're surrounded, it, escaping without their notice could be a little impractical. But nevertheless, these are the possible options. And to deal with these options, you can learn to write more than what they ask. They've asked the possible options. You can involve the ethical theories that will be required to deal with these options and to choose the option. Then they ask, what are the ethical dilemmas being faced by Rohit? There will be many ethical dilemmas. Some of them I've suggested here. There will be actually many ethical dilemmas. The dilemma between law and conscience, law and ethics, laws and empathy, laws and compassion. On one side, you have to uphold the law, arrest the extremists. On the other side, you have to empathize with the tribals' emotions. You have to empathize with their point of view. They think that it's written in the case that they are the protectors and the saviors. If that's what they believe, we have to respect that belief. We have to respect that emotion, show some sensitivity, and protect civilians' life at all cost. However, it seems that it will be difficult for you to manage both of them. A duty to a state and duty to people, legal responsibility versus moral responsibility towards agitated citizens. There's a question of doing justice, and there's a question of dealing with the consequences of the process of doing justice. You will deliver justice to the nation and to the family of the deceased army personnel in the ambush if you uphold the arrest of the insurgents. But the consequences in the process can lead to further injustices if there are civilian casualties. There'll be more violence and there'll be more mistrust, and governance process may become very difficult in that scenario in the future. So either you'll go for short-term stability or long-term rule of law. Short-term stability will come from appeasement, appease the crowd temporarily. But long-term rule of law will come from deterrence and strong security action. It seems that, although it seems like it's really difficult to balance both of them, you maintain your professional integrity or public trust. Professional integrity by following the police protocols. And in that case, you cannot be letting them go, at least without the superior orders. And public trust, maintaining community relations in conflict zones, not allowing harm, more so not allowing any casualties. Now, this is dilemma. They just have asked dilemma. In the question, if you see, what are the dilemmas? But write more than what has been asked. If these are the dilemmas, then how perhaps you're going to solve the dilemmas? By some of the normative ethics approach, by something that's there in your syllabus, emotional intelligence, moral and political attitudes, challenges of corruption and governance. There are other things that you can use, ethical concerns and dilemmas in public authority, accountability and ethical governance. You can mention that some of the topics from the syllabus that you have to take care of, and you can use them in resolving the ethical dilemma. It's always better to write a little more than what has been asked. The third question is, which of the option do you think will be most appropriate and why? The most appropriate option seems to be third followed by fifth. Third is to negotiate, it's not working, and the fourth will merge with third actually. If it's not negotiation not working, you will buy the time and then use non-lethal crowd control measures. Why? The justification. Well, you can justify an action if it is ethical. And what's ethical? One that has ethics plus integrity plus aptitude, one that has standards and your courage and conviction and your dutifulness and responsibility and your motivation and habit to implement the standards, and your sensitivity and your reasoning and your imagination, innovation, and leadership, and your persuasion and your consciousness and your wisdom to implement that standard effectively. If you can bring in all three in your decision, then that will be justified decision. Like ethics, you have certain standards, deontology and utilitarianism, using non-lethal measures will ensure minimal harm, right-based approach, respect protesters' right to dissent while asserting your legal authority, virtue ethics, demonstrate courage, at the same time, empathy, restraint, and that will ensure all the values coming together, that would be integrity. Gandhian ethics, ahimsa, etc. You can mention certain standards. All of these need not be mentioned. You can mention two or one standards that you will maintain. Integrity, upholding the law. That's integrity. Rohit's role as a protector, performance of your duty. You can talk about other elements of integrity, accountability. You'll be accountable to the rest of the people. You'll be accountable to the security force. You'll be accountable to your professional code of conduct. Be accountable, did you assure ethical governance or not? Your idea of integrity to maintain your various duties, as we discussed in the dilemmas. So resolution of conflict of interest in administration, that's also relating to maintenance of integrity. So you can highlight some of these things that the decision, the course of action that you're deciding 3 and then 5 aligns with these ideas of integrity and ethics and aptitude, emotional intelligence, engaging with the elders and the village women leaders that taps into emotional core of the protesting group. You can use sensitivity, you can use consciousness, you can use wisdom, you can use leadership, you can use communication, you can use persuasion, you can use EI, you can use various aspects of aptitude in highlighting that this decision aligns with many of the civil service aptitude. So that is a justification. Justification means you have to show that it is right. It is right. Why it is right? Because it is ethical, so it is right. It has ethics, integrity, and aptitude, so it is right. Then the D part. In the present situation, what are the extra precautionary measures to be taken? Why extra? Because women protesters are there. So extra precautionary measures. Extra precautionary measures, you have to begin from within, and then you have to go gradually to external measures within and without, or internal and external measures. So within, you have to bring your sensitivity. Deploy women police officers, preferably if they are, for crowd handling, or get them if you don't have, if possible. Non-lethal crowd control, because mostly it's all women. So sensitivity, communication strategy, use loudspeakers, explain the legal situation and assure their safety that you are the protector and the savior. It's a sovereign authority with legal authority, moral authority, not the Naxals. Use emotional intelligence. Empathize with the cultural context. Recognize that what they feel may be justified in a limited context and you respect that, but they are erroneous and in certain way they are not correct, that you have to highlight that. You will show sensitivity and respect their point of view. You will not show aggressive posture immediately. Transparency, record the operations, body cam, CCTV to maintain accountability. We have medical readiness, ask for reinforcement for the medical vans, just in case things go out of hand and you have to use non-lethal rubber bullets, etc., so that the first aid would be ready. Community engagement involve NGOs, local peace committees, ASHA workers, Anganwadi workers from the very next day for confidence building exercise. De-escalation planning. Avoid night operation, and if you can hold on for the whole night till the dawn or the morning, that would be good. Create safe space for women to disperse. Take care of it. So if you do that, you align with the feminist ethics. You have consequentialism in your mind. You're mindful of the consequence, not just of your duty and your virtues. And if you do that, all of that, then the promise of the Constitution, then constitutional morality, the idea of trusteeship under the social contract, the idea of natural rights of people to be protected at all cost, the idea of public trust at the center of administration will all be upheld.